We interrupt your program to bring you breaking news out of Ingham County. 6 News has just learned County Prosecutor Stuart Dunnings III has been arrested and is facing criminal charges. We just got this information into our newsroom, and we've learned for you that Prosecutor Dunnings is facing a felony count of pandering, punishable by up to 20 years in prison. As of right now, Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette and Ingham County Sheriff Gene Rigglesworth plan to hold a news conference at 1 o'clock this afternoon to discuss the case against him.
This is 6 News at noon.
We begin at noon with breaking news out of Ingham County, where Prosecutor Stuart Dunnings III has been arrested and is facing criminal charges. In 1 hour, Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette will be answering questions as they pertain to the criminal case against the veteran prosecutor who's been upholding the law in Ingham County for the past 19 years. 6 News has learned the felony charges are pandering related and are punishable by up to 20 years in prison. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Siobhan Klepper with this breaking news update. The Michigan Attorney General and the Ingham County Sheriff are about to announce criminal charges against Ingham County Prosecutor Stuart Dunnings. Dunnings has been the Ingham County Prosecutor for almost 20 years. Now, from court documents, we've been able to piece together 6 criminal charges in 3 counties, including willful neglect of duty and engaging services of prostitution. Let's take you there now.
Sheriff Gene Rigglesworth and I are here today to make an announcement that is disheartening to the law enforcement community. We discovered that a member of law enforcement was using the services of women who were being trafficked. Ingham County Sheriff Gene Rigglesworth and I are announcing that a series of criminal charges are being filed today against Ingham County Prosecutor Stuart Dunnings III.
We have an update for you tonight on the charges against Ingham County Prosecutor Stuart Dunnings III and his brother, Stephen Dunnings.
And according to the Michigan Attorney General's office, Dunnings has been arraigned on all 3 counties. In all 3 counties, he's charged in Ingham, Ionia, and Clinton counties and is free on bond tonight. His brother, Stephen, has still not been arraigned at this time. Our Haley Herzog joins us now live from the News Center with more on how these charges may be looked at as a case of human trafficking or not, and how it may impact the perception people have of law enforcement. Haley, what did you find out?
Well, Jane, Sherry, Stuart Dunnings has not been charged with human trafficking, but some believe the act of pandering, which he has been charged with, is human trafficking. This may mean further charges at the state level and possibly federal level down the road.
Prostitution is trafficking.
State Senator Judy Emmons, who has worked to pass multiple bills on human trafficking in the state, believes there is no doubt on what the charges against Dunnings come down to.
When I look at the charges and I look at the examples given, for me, it's trafficking.
Our Sherry Jones has been following the latest chapter in this ongoing story all afternoon. She's here for you now in the studio. And Sherry, what can you tell us about this today?
Jane, Ingham County Prosecutor Stuart Dunnings III submitted a letter of resignation to county officials today, effective this summer, July 2nd. He's taking a medical leave of absence until then and says he won't run for re-election this year. The 63-year-old Dunnings, who has been the elected prosecutor in Ingham County now for nearly 20 years, was formally charged in court March 14th.
Former Senate Democratic leader Gretchen Whitmer is stepping in to become the interim Ingham County prosecutor, and today she took an early oath of office.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
Whitmer is taking over a role that's come into the spotlight because of a scandal. Soon-to-be former prosecutor Stuart Dunnings is stepping down amidst charges he hired prostitutes hundreds of times. Whitmer says she wants to rebuild the community's trust in the office of the prosecutor.
My goal is at the end of this 6 months, I've got a well-run professional office that whomever the constituents decide to elect is, I can hand that over with pride and know that we've done a good job for the people of Ingham County.
Now to a story we first told you about last week. Ingham County Prosecutor Stuart Dunnings III's wife has filed for divorce after he was arrested on multiple charges related to prostitution. Last week, the Lansing attorney Jeffrey Ray tells us that Dunnings' wife filed the papers last week in an Ingham County courtroom. And on top of the charges related to prostitution, Dunnings also faces a felony charge of pandering and neglecting his duties. First, we have breaking news you need to know about. Former Ingham County Prosecutor Stuart Dunnings has pleaded guilty to felony misconduct in office and a prostitution charge. The felony charge carries up to 5 years in prison. As part of the plea deal, 14 other charges related to prostitution were dismissed. For nearly 2 decades, Stuart Dunnings III was considered one of the most respected figures in mid-Michigan.
But today at Jackson County courtroom, Dunnings confirmed the reasons why that is no longer the case.
The former county prosecutor accepted a plea deal and pleaded guilty to some of his prostitution-related charges. Our Haley Herzog was in the courtroom all afternoon. She joins us to explain exactly what Dunnings agreed to. Haley?
Jane, Sherry, Stuart Dunnings III entered the courtroom this afternoon facing more than a dozen prostitution-related charges, but tonight, after Judge Michael Claren accepted a plea agreement, that number has been dropped to 2. Here's what the deal lays out. Dunnings pleaded guilty for 2 charges: misconduct in office, a felony, and engaging the services of a prostitute, which is a misdemeanor. All the other charges have been dropped. In total, Dunnings now faces a maximum 5 years in prison, and the reasoning behind the other charges being dropped is because it would require the women who were victimized by Dunnings to stand trial, something the Attorney General's office didn't want to ask of the women.
Today's plea is really about protecting the victims of those crimes.
Now, shortly after Judge Claren accepted the plea deal, Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette made an announcement on the matter, saying that Dunnings' law license will be automatically suspended, something Schuette wants to make permanent.
The Attorney General also released a statement saying, quote, "The system in Michigan is not rigged. We have one system of justice and the rules apply to all." A man who once made his living putting criminals behind bars is now headed to jail himself. And that is our top story tonight at 5. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jane Aldridge. Former Ingham County prosecutor Stuart Dunnings was sentenced in a Lansing courtroom this afternoon. Dunnings was sentenced to 3 years probation. The first year he'll spend in jail. This comes after he pleaded guilty to felony charges of misconduct in office and misdemeanor charges of soliciting a prostitute. Our Lauren Thompson has been following this story. She joins us now. And what are the details about this story, Lauren?
Well, Jane, it certainly was an emotional day in court today, not just on Stuart Dunnings' end, but on the judges as well. Dunnings stood before the court today laying out very personal details of his life and how it was first affected by sexual abuse at the age of 3, his first encounter with a prostitute at the age of 13, and then details of a sex addiction he says plagued him his entire life. Now, Dunnings broke down several times as he offered apologies to his family, the community, and even his victims. However, still today, he maintains he had no idea that at the time of his relationship with the woman known as W6 in this case, that he was leading her into prostitution.
And it was from September to December of that year that we had sexual relations. After that point in time, we did not have sexual relations, but we continued to have some sporadic contact.
I am not sending you to prison, but you're going to be punished.
Former Ingham County prosecutor Stuart Dunnings finally learns his fate, and 6 News was in the courtroom as the judge handed down his sentence. It is our top story tonight at 6. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sherry Jones.
And I'm Jane Aldridge. Stuart Dunnings spent nearly 2 decades putting other people behind bars, but now he is on the other side of the law.
We first broke the news to you at noon that Dunnings will spend 1 year in jail as part of his 3 years probation. Here's a recap of how we got to this point. In March, Dunnings was charged with 15 criminal counts relating to prostitution. He resigned as prosecutor in July and went into rehab for sex addiction. Former lawmaker Gretchen Whitman took over as interim Ingham County prosecutor when he stepped down. Then in August, Dunnings pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of misconduct in office and engaging the services of a prostitute. 14 of the other charges he faced were dropped as a result of his plea. And that brings us to today. We're here for you with team coverage of the very latest developments. We begin
tonight with Lauren Thompson live from the newsroom. Good evening, Lauren. What can you tell us?
Well, Jane, Sherry, Stuart Dunnings spoke on his own behalf during what was an emotional sentencing hearing today. He broke down several times while he offered apologies to his family, the community, his staff, and even his victims. In the end, though, tears didn't save him as the judge handed down a sentence above and beyond the recommendations in this case. As Stuart Dunnings faced his fate in court today, he made an emotional plea, detailing a lifelong struggle, first with sexual abuse and then a sex addiction.
My first sexual experience was at the age of 13 with a prostitute.
It's a problem Dunnings says he struggled with his entire life, following him to college and into his marriage, one he says for years he thought was under control.
I don't know what happened to me in 2010. I went off the rails.
The judge in this case says the court will not sign off on any time off for good behavior or any other reason. As we've reported, the judge says he went above the suggested sentencing guidelines in this case, but some think he could have done even more. We send it now to Alexandra Illich with more on that. Allie?
That's right, Lauren. Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette says while he's pleased Stuart Dunnings will be behind bars, he believes the former prosecutor deserves to stay there a little bit longer, simply because Dunnings violated the public's trust and broke the laws he was responsible for enforcing. Take a listen.
I thought it would have been more appropriate to be in prison for, at least 2 years. But, and why? It's because when you hold the public trust, you're a prosecutor. You're supposed to enforce the law.
This is 6 News at 6.
We're following breaking news at this hour out of Ingham County, where former county prosecutor Stuart Dunnings III turned himself into jail. It was all caught exclusively on our cameras. Thanks for joining us. I'm Aaron Dimmick. Jane and Sherry have the night off. It has become a prime example of a prominent figure's fall from grace. Stuart Dunnings had until 6 o'clock tonight to surrender himself to police at the Ingham County Jail. And he did just that less than 30 minutes ago. We had our cameras rolling at the county jail all afternoon, and just after 5:30, Dunnings pulled up to the jail, then made his way inside. He will now be transported to the Clinton County Jail to start serving his sentence. Earlier this week, a Genesee County judge sentenced Dunnings to 3 years probation, with the first year to be served in jail. Dunnings pleaded guilty in August to misconduct in office and soliciting a prostitute. In exchange, many other charges against him were dropped.